I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you very much for attending. My name is Dave Castles. I'm the president of the Coalition for Canadian Police Reform. I'm very pleased with the attendance today and, of course, the interest in our work. That's very important. I would like to open our session today by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. An important step in reconciliation is our acknowledgement of traditional lands. The Coalition for Canadian Police Reform is a national nonprofit with one primary vision, and that is to elevate the police profession in Canada. Our mission is to see the creation of a College of Policing for Canada, uniquely designed for our country and established by an act of Parliament. The college would be responsible for the development of national standards that are current and relevant for all entry-level police officers, including a national certification protocol to be administered by the provinces in accordance with the provincial existing Police Act legislation. Regrettably, at the present time, the training and development of our police officers is too short, too subjective, and is not relevant for our diverse and complex 21st century. The curriculum content varies from province to province, and the curriculum in each police entity is very, very different. The existing curriculum also varies in length from one province to another. Regrettably, it is not focused on all of the competencies required for an operational police officer, and there are no meaningful academic principles applied to certification. A College of Policing would be the central repository for training, education, and best practices, an entity that does not exist in Canada today. There have been many studies, reports, commissions, and public inquiries, including the most recent Mass Casualty Commission report, that recommended modernizing police education research, and that Public Safety Canada work with the provinces and territories to establish a 3-year degree model for all police services and police officers in Canada. Our mission is to see this come to fruition, not bricks and mortar, but an entity similar to the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons responsible for the training and education of doctors. I encourage all of you to join our coalition as a member. Please go to our website at c-cpr.com. Our webinar today is planned for no more than 90 minutes in length. I would ask you all to participate in the discussion and submit any of your questions or comments in the chat. Our moderator will draw from these questions. I would now like to introduce and welcome Professor Nancy McNaughton, who has agreed to assist us by introducing everyone and act as a moderator. Nancy is an assistant professor of the School of Public Health at the University of Toronto and a communications specialist who has worked for over 20 years in police education with a focus on helping police officers develop communication responses to people experiencing mental health and emotional crisis. Today, with her colleague, Kerry, they engage human simulation as the approach to learning, not only with police professionals, but also with many professional groups within healthcare and beyond. Nancy is a proud board member of the Coalition for Canadian Police Reform and supports the need for a professional College of Policing for Canada. Nancy, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you for having us come and actually do this webinar with you. It's something we've been actually looking forward to a lot. And I want to say a little bit about Kerry, who I've been working with for over 25 years, for the longest time in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto. But since leaving there, we've created, or Kerry has actually created, a company by the name of Communication Matters that we're both co-directors of. And it really is because of our passion for communication, teaching across the professions. So we've worked a lot in healthcare, but we've increasingly been working with police officers, lawyers, architects, insurance brokers, business people. The idea is that professional communication requires practice and it requires attention, and all professions can benefit from looking at their communication practices, not simply kind of on an academic level, but actually on a practice level. So my interest in emotional-centered care and emotion-centered communication dovetails with Kerry's passion for conflict resolution. That's how we've come together. That's where our work intersects. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kerry now to introduce yourself a little bit more.
Well, you've said a lot, Nancy. So thank you. Nancy and I have been joined at the hip really for many years. And I fell in love with her over 25 years ago. So we finish each other's sentences, and you may see some of that today. But yes, we are with our company, Communication Matters. And I hold a Master's of Law degree at from Osgood Hall, and my work, the specialty really was ADR, alternate dispute resolution, and so my work and my focus, along with Nancy's, really highlights how the assumptions we make, the judgments we make, and our communication inform and impact our personal and professional interactions, and how when we're generous, willing, and brave, those conversations also inform how we repair tension and conflict and how we build relationship. That's really the hub of it.
Yeah.
And I also want to, from Ontario, acknowledge here that we are white, cisgender, able-bodied female settlers, pronouns she and her. And we also want to recognize that the land we're working, standing, living, loving on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, and now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I think the following is the minimal least one can say about how much we've taken, still take, from Indigenous communities and how much has been lost. Shame on me. I recognize that on this land covered by Treaty 13, I think we can all go to our kitchens and pour a glass of water without suffering physical or emotional hardship. We're, unlike many communities across Canada, still without decent drinking water. No one asks us what our lives are like as white women. We know where all the people we love and have lost are resting. We're not looking for our family members. So I think about that deep lasting havoc that we've inflicted, that we've taken so much and left so little for Indigenous people who cherish Mother Earth, who are so generous in their willingness to forgive and in their exhaustion to teach. And Governor General Mary Simon said the time to say we didn't know is over. And I agree. So Nancy, take us into this day. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so if we can have the PowerPoint up, that would be lovely. That would be great. And can you make me a co-presenter? I lost my status there.
Sorry about that, Nancy.
That's okay.
And as we go through, everyone, we're inviting you to put your thoughts and questions in the chat.
Awesome.
And John and Hannah, who are here to kind of monitor what's coming up, will let us know. Yeah. So
Perfect.
thank you.
So we're going to be spending the next hour and a half together doing a couple of things. But before we start, I want to talk about this. Imagine that you've received a dispatch about a jewelry store owner who has called in to say that there has been an older man wandering around her store, looking confused, a bit disheveled. He's not really dressed for the weather. He's wearing slippers. That concerns her. And he's been picking up jewelry and putting it down and kind of talking to himself. And when she tried to address him, he kind of looked surprised that she was even there. He's walked out of the store. He hasn't taken anything with him. She's sure of that. But he's now been wandering around in front of the store, up and down the sidewalk, very, very close to a busy street. That's the call. That's all you know. Okay. So imagine. As we work through our hour and a half together, this is one of the ideas that we have kind of settled with, which is that I think common to policing education broadly, and definitely health professions education, is this idea for the things we learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. So thank you, Aristotle. So this is the idea that we need to practice. We need to see the people that we are working with and our students actually engage in the things we want to see them able to do. And so this is where simulation comes in. This is where it's always come in, and it's attached to the idea of practice. So over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be exploring some of the educational theory and principles that underpin the development of professional competencies. We're going to be observing a scenario and reflecting on how empathic communication skills support critical decision-making, problem-solving, and safe engagement in professional practice. And we're going to discuss, following this scenario, what is the relevance of hand-on reflective practice to the development of competency? So the first idea that we were playing with here, and really does underpin most of our work, is this idea of reflection. This idea that, experience alone isn't learning. We need to be able to deliberately reflect on what it is we've experienced in a learning situation. And the word deliberate is deliberate. We need to take the time. We need to pause. We need to have conversations and think deeply about what that learning is. So John Dewey, who was really the grandfather of adult education, agreed. He was the one who said adults need to learn from experience, but that's not enough. And the reason this is important to us, there are a number of reasons, but one is everybody's curriculum is so packed. Policing, for sure, is packed with things that need to be covered, legislation, laws, policies, guidelines, all of the various knowledge that has to be taken in. And so when we get to communication, there tends to be a similar kind of idea that we just need to teach communication. We're going to get this communication. And the amount of time spent thinking about what it is that people are saying and the impact is sometimes lost. You can't spend a very short period of time and then just move on. You need to reflect on it. The other piece that comes to mind is that you have many, many different kinds of communication that you engage in. And as all those different team communication, tactical communication, what we're focusing on today is really that communication with people who are experiencing distress, mental or emotional distress in that you come across, and that we know you come across more often these days than you used to. The person who really put this idea of reflection into the educational sphere was Donald Shawn in the 1980s. He wrote a book called The Reflective Practitioner, How Professionals Think in Action. And he was very interested in how experts in their professional fields actually became experts in their professional fields. Architects, engineers, lawyers, doctors. What was it that they were doing that was different from a novice? And he came up with all of these different kinds of reflection. He started with reflection about action. And so we can think about that kind of reflection as, I think about it as a surgeon who's doing a mental rehearsal before they go into a procedure. So they're thinking about, what is the event? What are the tools? What might happen? They're thinking deeply about what might happen. Reflection on action is what happens actually after the event. So how did it go? How are we analyzing what actions took place? What decisions were made? What was the impact on everybody, including the patient, the subject, our team members? So reflection on action is a really important piece of how we're going to move to the next event. We're going to take that with us so that we can improve our behavior in the next time. And then the next one, I still want to hit enter, is reflection in action. And this is actually the hardest kind of reflection, because it requires that we recognize in the moment what we are thinking and feeling, and become aware of not only our own thinking and feeling, but what is going on in the environment. What is the affect? In other words, what is the intensity of the emotion in place? What is the situation? What's happening in the environment with our team members, with ourselves? And being able to mobilize that information in a response. And so this is, I think, where police education lives. This is where police education lives for us. So when we're working in the area that we're working, we spend a lot of time timing out so that we can have people stop and realize what it is they are actually feeling, which is an important piece of information. What are they seeing? What are they thinking? And what are they planning to do? Yeah. So Kerry.
Yeah, the other theoretical framework that we use in the work that we do together is attribution theory. And some of you may be familiar with attribution theory. We find it to be relevant in almost every facet of our daily living. And it's really about how we decide about each other. When we meet someone for the first time, we kind of suss them out. We decide who we think we're standing in front of. It's really connected to the difference in perception between that two individuals or two groups have about why things happen, about events and behavior. And also, the conundrum of attribution theory is that the studies indicate that we as human beings are remarkably inclined to assign blame and responsibility to others based on their personality and their disposition. Attribution theory says, I get you, but you couldn't possibly get me because I'm way too complex. So how do we ever get together when we think about attribution and all the pieces that are at work? An example, I borrow $5 from Nancy and she gives it to me. A couple of days later, I borrow $10 from Nancy and she gives it to me. And, payday rolls around and I wander into her office and I give her $15. I'm feeling pretty good. And what does Nancy think?
I think that she's just paying me back so she can borrow more money, because Kerry's a person who borrows money. She's always going to be a person who borrows money. So I might start avoiding her. But that's Kerry.
But that's sticking with Nancy. And how do I ever get myself out of that thing that Nancy is now, she's now decided. I'll do the meeting thing. So it's 3:00 and we're supposed to start our meeting and Nancy's not here. I'm texting her, I'm calling her, she's not here. I'm even calling her on the phone and I start to think, where is Nancy? Does she not care about being here on time? Does she not care about that I'm here waiting? And so when she does come in at 3:05, I am chalk to the hand. I'm upset. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to finish the session. But at 3:00, I could also think maybe traffic is bad, or maybe her internet is down. Maybe her Wi-Fi is down. Maybe she's not feeling well. And then when she comes in at 3:05, I have a completely different take on Nancy. I'm happy to see her. I'm happy to let's go ahead. So glad you're here. So when we look at the visual of attribution theory, here is what it looks like. This is how we make decisions, and we walk up the ladder so quickly. But at the bottom rung, it says observable data. So if you're in a meeting and you're being videotaped, you might see someone look at their watch, stare into space, and leave the room and come back. Well, the second piece here says select data. So what is it about that behavior that really stands out for me? For me, it's looking at the watch. That means something, that I'm not going fast enough, that something's up. For Nancy, it might mean something else. She might be looking at the person leaving and coming back. And so her antenna is up over that data, that behavior. And so we start to add meaning. We make assumptions, we draw conclusions, and by the time I get to the top of the ladder, I am so upset about this person looking at their watch that I'm done. I don't want to take another meeting with them. Nancy has walked up the ladder thinking maybe they're in trouble. Maybe there's something going on in their lives and I want to talk to them. So two divergent opinions and approaches to the same person, same behavior.
Absolutely. And here's another way of looking at it, which is if we bring the lens out a little bit, we all have a worldview that we bring into every situation we walk into. So it's our background, our family background, our social background, our cultural background. It's our experiences in the world. And so if we think about what Kerry's been talking about with respect to groups, different groups, or people with different conditions, or people from different populations, our worldview informs our frame, what's going to stand out. So if I think about a person who has schizophrenia and I see them on the street and they're behaving in a kind of erratic manner, they're talking to themselves, they're gesticulating, depending on my worldview, and I may notice that that person is acting unpredictably, is acting erratically, and that is going to inform my assumptions and judgments about what is going on there. This person is dangerous possibly, and I better stay away from them. So it affects my behavior. On the other hand, my worldview may be that I have a family member with schizophrenia, or I know someone who has schizophrenia, and what I notice in that person is, yes, they're talking to themselves and perhaps they're gesticulating a little bit, but I also notice that they're not dressed for the weather, that they are looking like they are in trouble, they're alone, and I'm wondering why they're alone. So the frame that I put on that as a result of my own experience is going to be very different. It's going to be about what my assumptions and judgment are going to be. This person may need help. This person may be lost. They may need assistance. And so that is going to inform my behavior. So in a larger way, this idea of attribution does inform our decision-making and our problem solving and in our behavior, which then will have an impact on the next thing that happens. Okay. And this is one of our thesis, right, Kerry? So my own area in emotion really has influenced this idea that how we feel informs what is going to come out of our mouth, and what comes out of our mouth in communication is really going to affect how we're feeling. And in the profession specifically, emotion is one of those things that tends to be evacuated. We do not want our professionals to be emotional because it gets in the way of their objectivity. This is I think it's changing now, but it was very, very common. So to be rational and objective, you need to get rid of your emotions so you can make a good, safe decision, a good, rational decision. We know from neuroscience that this isn't actually possible. We can't evacuate our emotion. Our emotion and our reason are connected, just connected integrally. If I want a cup of coffee, I have an emotion about that. If something more serious, I have an emotion about that. Emotion is important information, not only about what's going on in front of you, but about yourself. And when I think about policing and the fear that many new trainees or new officers, and maybe even more experienced officers, have in the face of the situations that they have to face, it's information. It's really valuable information that we need to incorporate into our communication practices. So
the last thing we think about is moving towards emotion.
Yes.
Yes,
we just want people to stop doing what they're doing. Just stop doing what you're doing.
Don't feel that way.
That's right. That's right.
So we're thinking about communication really in the context of relationship. Whether it's someone we know or a complete stranger, we are in relationship all the time. And the nature of our communication with others is so tied up and informed by the perspective that each of us holds about the responsibility we have to these relationships. And a quick example, let's talk about the Loblaws parking lot. I have a big 18-liter jug of water that is empty and I have to return. And it's Saturday morning, but I need the water and I want to get close to the entrance. I take a risk. I drive to the parking lot. And it's jammed. It's jammed, but I drive up and down, and I finally see someone going to their car, and it's near the entrance. So I'm thrilled. I just pull up, leave the engine running, and I wait. They're probably, talking on the phone, looking in the mirror, I don't know. But finally, the brake lights come on, and they pull out, and I'm thrilled. I get ready to pull in, and just as I'm getting ready to pull in, a little car, a little green Yaris pulled into my spot. My spot, I've been waiting. Nobody's been around. It's my spot. So I don't even stop the car. I leave my driver's door open and I start to march towards that car. And I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth. It's not going to be pretty because I'm really unhappy because I've committed to this and now it's over. So I'm marching towards the vehicle, and as I get closer, the driver's door opens, a guy gets out, he turns around. It's my neighbor. What? And the passenger door opens and my mother gets out. I'm still marching towards the car, but what's different? Is anything different? And I realized that, no matter who gets out of that car, it's somebody's neighbor, somebody's mother, somebody's brother. And I can ruin my day depending on how I behave, and I can ruin their day depending on what I say, what comes out of my mouth. Just something that I've been thinking about.
So we do really want to focus in our teaching on relationship. These are some of the active listening communication skills that are part of our teaching.
Yep.
And all of them, they're called active listening, but active listening is not one thing. It is all of these very specific skills in action. And so, we may want to, and I want to say there are many, many of these kinds of skills and documents out there. And I think communication is being taught across the board in many different places. The difference is that we get to focus on not only what, because we all know what we're supposed to be saying, but actually seeing people put these into action and experience the response.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And even if they look a little different and sound a little different, what they all do, all of them, is acknowledge the thoughts, the ideas, the perspective and experience of the person in front of you. For instance, let's just take apart questioning. You can't ask someone a question without having noticed something or seen them do something or read a file about them. So when you ask a question, you're sending them a message. If we think about it from the perspective of the receiver, you're asking me a question and you're saying, I'm curious about you. I'm interested in something about you. And the question I ask is important enough for me to ask that I'm willing to wait for your answer. And so the effect on me being asked is that you're curious about me, you're invested in me, you need my help, and you're letting me know how important it is because you're waiting and you're committed. Yeah.
So the only other one we're going to take apart is summarizing, because I think of summarizing as a little bit of magic. It allows me, as the person who may be in conversation with a person in distress, to take a break, to take a breath, and to collect my thoughts about what I've heard so far. Often people in distress are perhaps not organized in the way that they're providing information, or they may be a slight bit of incoherence. And so for me to slow it down and feed back to that person what I've heard them say so far is really helpful for me, because I know then that I'm checking in, that I've got information correctly, and that they know that I've heard them and I'm checking in. And if I've got something wrong, they'll correct me. And we're in a conversation now. So it allows us both to feel like we're on the same ground, and allows the other person to feel like, okay, so I did say a lot to this person that I wasn't even aware that I said. So it's a really valuable way. And to just calm the situation down, take a breath, and just repeat back. It seems so simple, and yet it doesn't often happen. The only other thing I want to say before we move on to this next one is this idea that relationship is at the core of communication. And we do some work with this, with the communication ladder, where you're often moving from no relationship with a new person that you're meeting on the street, that you're interacting with, through empathy, which is not one thing, like active listening is not one thing. It's actually a whole series of ways of communicating with someone in order to understand what they're experiencing. And then into rapport. So that rapport is where you actually start developing a relationship so that you can help influence the person and their behavior. Oftentimes we see people try and make a shortcut from no relationship to influence, or no relationship to rapport. And that sounds like, hey buddy, is a really interesting shortcut. You don't know this person. You don't know they're a buddy. You don't know anything about them. And you actually don't know enough, right? To enter into a relationship yet. So we always slow that one down.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kerry?
Yeah, no, just I get you. Shortcut.
I get you. Yeah.
I understand. I get that's a shortcut. When these skills that Nancy and I were describing, those are all ways of saying I understand without ever using those dreaded words, because we risk an onslaught if we say that, because people don't think we do understand unless we are specific about it.
And maybe we don't understand.
And maybe we don't. Right? Yeah.
So these shoes are my favorite. They're really just a reminder that, in fact, when we think about competence, we're thinking about knowledge, but we're also thinking about people being able to do something with that knowledge. And so, you know, one of the pioneers in simulation was talking to a colleague and said, you know, when we have kids and we're asking them about showing us how to tie their shoes, we don't say, write me an essay. We say, show us how you tie your shoelaces. And it's the same thing. We don't want our professionals to go out being able to write essays and do multiple choice exams and do all of this kind of written stuff. We want to see them in action, make decisions, respond to situations, decide critically about safety issues, and actually experience the responses, the impact of what comes back at them.
Yep.
So now, are there any questions? Is there anything in the chat that we need to be attending to, John? Or I can see this.
Chat's clear for the moment. I encourage people to put their questions in the chat.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of stuff, actually.
Yeah, and we're going to suspend right now and move into this a simulation segment. And so we'll hold these questions, and maybe at the very end we can tackle all of them. And we won't invite chat during this portion, but we will at the end, at the very end. And so we have two simulation professionals here with us today, and Nancy's going to introduce them, or one of them anyway, as our learner.
As the learner. So we're going to invite Wayne in to come in as our police learner, and I hope he's here. I've been seeing him zip in and out of the meeting, possibly as a result of there's Wayne. Okay, awesome. Okay, so Wayne, Hi. Come on in. Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to put that information back up if I can. If we can, if we can put the police information back up, because I want Wayne to read through it for me as my police officer, new officer, who has come in today to do some training with us around communication. So you can just move it to the next one, John, if you want. That's all. Perfect. Okay. So Wayne, if you would read this, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. Information for police. You have been dispatched by 911 to an 18th floor apartment where a person is claimed to be in distress, wielding a knife, and is possibly suicidal. The call came in from her roommate, who has now left the scene. The person is in the apartment and does not want to open the door.
So what stands out for you?
18th floor, knife, suicidal.
Okay. So what are you thinking?
Well, Well, I want to make sure she's safe. I need to know if she's safe. I need to know if she's okay. If she's suicidal and she's on the 18th floor, I need to know if there's whether there's a balcony or not, and and you know, such things. If there's if we need to call in a team to come down from a top or something like that, or how I, you know what, I'm thinking about how I get in the apartment. Do I need to, am I going to need to force my way in, you know? A lot of things come to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And so given where we are today, we're on Zoom or on GoToMeeting, and the physical tools that you might have at your disposal when we're in person, you don't have at your disposal, which actually offers us a great opportunity for you to really think about how your communication is going to inform. You're wanting to get into the apartment. You're wanting to ensure this person's safety. So we're looking really closely we're thinking about your communication skills. With respect to this. Yeah, you can, the other lovely thing is you have those resources at your fingertips when you are on the road. Maybe not at your fingertips, but you have a supervisor you can call it. You can have people come and get on the roof and get onto the balcony if need be. Today, we're actually thinking about you and how you are going to manage this before any of that happens. Okay? So the way this works is we're going to enter into the interaction, but Wayne, at any point where you want to time out, you time out, which means that if you have a question, if you're stuck, if you just, whatever, you can, if you need a breath, you just time out, and Kerry and I will come back on camera and we'll have a conversation with you. The only other people that are able to time out are Kerry and I. So Kerry and I may see something that's happening and we will time out and turn on our cameras, and again, we'll pause action and have a conversation. How does that sound? Okay?
Yeah. Do we have a name?
No. No name. And Kerry, anything else?
No, I think that's it. Once we're going to try and turn our cameras off, all of us, and pin you and
pin the person in the apartment. Yeah.
That says stay. Yeah. And then you can start.
So you can start with a knock. How's that? You can start as soon as you knock. We'll count that as the beginning. Okay, great. I'm going to get out of here.
And just a tip: if you go to Wayne and you hit the little pin button, he will become central, and you'll be able to see him more predominantly.
And the same thing with stay.
Yeah, same thing with stay. Okay.
Okay. Ma'am?
Hello?
Hi. Ma'am, are you there? Hi, can do you mind letting me in, please?
I don't know who you are.
Well, my name's Wayne. I hear you're having some trouble today. I'd really like to see that you're okay.
I don't know anybody named Wayne. You have the wrong place.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. You don't know me. Let me introduce myself. My name's Wayne. I'm a police officer, and we've heard a call from your roommate that you were having some trouble. She says, and she says you got a knife.
God, my roommate is a liar. My roommate is a liar and is making up lies about me. I do not trust her, and I do not trust the police. Please leave me alone.
I'm sorry.
Leave me alone.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I need to see you. I need to see you. I need to make sure you're okay. I want to help you. I just need to make sure you're okay. So if you can open this door, and I'll make sure you're okay. How's that?
No, that is not okay. I am fine. My roommate is making up
Well,
lies
ma'am, I
about
can't
me.
leave until I see you.
I
That's the
am
deal
fine.
here.
I am fine. I did not call the police. My roommate is a liar and has hated me since the day I moved in. Okay? You call my roommate. You
That
don't need
may all be true. I just have to see you. Otherwise, I can't leave until I see you. So
Do you know what happens? Do you know what happens back home when people let the police into their homes? Back home, you will arrest me and
look,
put me
I'm
in
not
jail, and I will
I'm
not be
not
able.
interested in doing anything except seeing you and making sure you're okay. I need to see you and make sure you're okay. So if you can open the door, that'd help me a lot.
I don't. You might be a murderer pretending that to be the police. I don't trust you. I do not
I'm
trust
not a
you, and I
murderer.
do not trust my
I'm
roommate.
not a murderer. I like if you come to the peephole here, I'll show you my badge.
Okay,
I
I'm
need
just
to
going to
get.
time out. I'm just going to time out. I'm going to time out. How's it going? How's it going, Wayne?
Well, I'm failing spectacularly.
So tell me what's going on.
Well, I need to get in there, and I'm not able to get in there. She just seems to. She doesn't want to open the door. She seems upset, and she's upset at me. She's upset. Period. It seems like.
And what are you hearing her say? What have you heard her say so far?
Well, she doesn't have very good feelings about her roommate.
Yeah.
What does she say about her roommate? What's she saying?
Is that her roommate always hated her. Her roommate's telling lies. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the police?
She said something. She keeps talking about what happens back home with police, and she doesn't trust police.
So I'm curious about, you initially said before we started, you're concerned about her safety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, that's why I need to see her. I need to see her. I need to see what she's got in the apartment.
Sure.
You know.
What is your biggest concern about her safety?
Well, I mean, it's right in what we got from dispatch, right? That's possibly suicidal. That she might be looking to kill herself or hurt herself or something.
Yeah. I mean, does she know that that's your concern? I think what I've heard you say is that I need to get into the apartment. I need to see you. I need to know if you're okay. You're in the ballpark, right? I need to get in. I need to see you.
Yeah.
I need to make sure you're okay. It's all about you, actually.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can actually let her know that you've heard what she's said?
Yeah, this might be an opportunity to do a summary of all the things. You've told us a lot of things, Wayne, about all the things that she has told you about her roommate, about the police. And the more specific you are about what you've heard, that seems to be what's getting in the way of her opening the door. The things that are in the way, because you're saying, I want to see you. I want to know if you're okay. But all these things are coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know if she knows that you've heard all that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's the invitation. That, and Nancy, can you turn your camera on? I'm just.
My camera is on. You just don't have me here.
I can't see you. Yeah.
So the other piece is that you're concerned about the knife because of a possible suicide.
Yeah.
How are you going to address that? Right? I mean, right now you're kind of wanting to address it by just getting into the apartment. How are you going to address that communication wise?
Well, I guess I'll just have to ask her.
And what would that sound like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm worried that you might be thinking of hurting yourself today.
Is she thinking of hurting herself, or is she thinking of killing herself?
Well,
So
I guess the question would be, is she thinking of killing herself? You want me to ask that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the research shows that if someone is suicidal, it's really important to be direct about that question. It actually is reported to be a relief for people who are seriously considering suicide to actually be asked that question. They're not planning on hurting themselves. They're planning on killing themselves, which is a very different question. And I know it's a hard question for you to ask. The more direct, the more important it is. And if she's not, then okay, right? You've got your answer. Right. And I would encourage you to ask that question directly. Okay. Yeah. So we've given you a whole bunch of stuff to think about, Wayne, So forget worrying about getting in there with, getting her to open the door by telling her to open the door. We've said maybe summarize what you've heard her say.
Yeah.
Summarize. Okay.
Right. Be specific. And maybe, I'm not sure about the introduction, but there is something about building relationship here that we really want to encourage you to do. So, and also the last piece is, if you're worried about suicide, name it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
So there's the invitation,
Okay.
letting her know all the things you've heard. And if she says more, letting her know that you've heard that too. And then, as Nancy is saying, being direct about this, your concern about suicide. Okay.
Okay. I think I got it.
Okay. Right. Okay. So you need to time out again. No problem. Time out. Well, we timed out. You can time out. Okay. Take it away. Time in.
Okay. Ma'am, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I don't need you to help. Okay, please go.
Well, can I make sure I'm understanding what you've told me about a few things?
Okay.
I just because I hear you saying a bunch of stuff, and I just want to make sure I've got right. You said that your roommate hates you, and that she tells lies about you. Is that what you told me?
Yes.
And how long have you been living here?
I've been here for 6 months. And
okay, and
she's hated me since the day I moved in.
Well, that sounds pretty tough to deal with. You also said that you have a problem with police from back home. Is that what you said?
Yes, police. They murder people. They put people in jail for no reason. They steal money. They're corrupt.
Where's back home?
The Philippines.
Well, that's a long way away.
Yeah.
Ma'am, do you have any family here?
No, I have no family here. I'm by myself. I'm here because I want to send money to my family, but I have not been able to do that. And I don't know what to do anymore. And now you're here. I don't know. You're going to arrest me. Then I can't even talk to my family. I have no idea what to do.
Well, let me reassure you. I have no plan to arrest you. I'm worried about you, though. It sounds like you're having a bad time, and well, I'm going to come right out and ask you, because I'm worried you might be thinking about killing yourself. Ma'am,
What?
are you thinking of killing yourself?
I just don't even know what to do anymore, okay? I have no job. I have no money. My roommate is trying to evict me, and I have been trying to do everything possible, but now I'm out of options. I have no options for work. I don't know what to
Okay,
do.
that sounds like you're in an awful spot. Listen, can I'd really like to talk to you a little more. I'd like to know your name if I could. I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Wayne. I'm a police officer.
I'm
What's
Anita.
your Anita?
I'm Anita, yes.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Anita. And once again, I'd really like to be able to see you face to face, if you'd allow that. That would
I
honestly. Sorry, go ahead.
I am just worried if I open the door, you will just burst in here and tackle me or something.
I have no plan to do that. It's just me here. And I don't want to put you in any more distress. I understand that you're having a tough time. I just want to make sure you're okay.
Okay, I will open the door through the chain lock, okay?
That's fair. Hi. Thanks for doing that.
Okay, I'm fine. You
Sorry.
see, I'm fine.
Okay, I'm gonna time out.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about this, Wayne.
All right. So how was that? And so our cameras take a while for us to kick on here, but yeah, we're here.
Yeah, yours is not turning on for some reason, Nancy. I don't know why, but yeah. Okay.
Well, I can see me anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So what was that? What happened here, Wayne?
Well, she opened the door a bit.
She opened the door.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Why did that happen?
Well, I guess because I asked her, and I asked her again to tell me her name, and she did, and I thought that was that was pretty big, and then so I figured I'd dive in and try and get her to open the door.
What did you do before that, though? What were you putting in place? What were you cultivating earlier? You went in.
Well, I was just going with your suggestion. I just figured, okay, well, if I tell her what I heard, maybe that'd help her know that I'd heard something, and it seemed to calm her down a little bit and allow her to talk about more stuff.
Talk about more stuff. You facilitated this opportunity for her to say more.
I guess, and she filled in some of the blanks, right?
She did.
Like she filled in, like she told me where home was, and that
yes,
I think she's feeling a lot of financial stress.
Yeah.
So how was it? Because we watched you take that leap to ask about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you?
Well, it felt like a big jump. And then when I first brought it up and she didn't say anything, I thought, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then I just figured, okay, I can't deny I've brought it up, so I've just got to ask her directly.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
maybe maybe I had to phrase it in the form of a question for her. And
Yeah.
then when I
she
did,
didn't answer. Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
asked again.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels big. I mean, I think, I was going to ask you, what is the fear about asking that question? Because you're not alone. No one wants to ask that question. Mental health nurses have difficulty asking that question. So, because it's direct, what's the fear? Are you afraid you're going to suggest it to her and that she's going to imagine that that's it, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just so personal, right? Because it's like, if you keep it in the realm with something general, like, are you going to hurt yourself? It's one thing. If you make it that specific, you're going right to the heart of someone's thinking, maybe. I don't know. It just felt hard to do.
Well, and it came
Once I
back.
brought it up, I had to keep going with it.
And she gave you information after that, which was really helpful that she'd never given before.
She
right?
did. Yeah. She did for sure.
So it felt at the end like you were on the same ground. Even though you weren't in the same room together yet, you were on the same ground. You'd been listening to each other, right? There was a sense of calmness.
Yeah.
It's not, I guess the other thing is you're not going to change how she's feeling by virtue of your interaction. However, it really did calm her down.
Yeah. The rapport that you were building had an influence on what she did next, and opening the door was huge when we started. It felt like a huge leap for you to take when we started. And by the time you had heard all the things that she said, and she shared more when you asked about suicide, it didn't feel like such a leap for her to open that door. Yeah. It felt like I was thinking, it makes sense now that she opens the door.
The other thing I just wanted to point out, because I have the privilege of writing these things down, is right off the top, you asked permission. It was great. You asked her permission if you could actually, have this conversation with her. The other thing that was lovely, Wayne, and really hard, I struggle with this one, is use of silence. You actually allowed silence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I probably didn't know what to say.
Yeah,
you were listening deeply, but it changed the tempo of the interaction from something that felt like you had to do something immediately to a much calmer pace, right?
And when we first went in, Wayne, I wrote down, because you said she was telling you about, my roommates hated me since I moved in, and I don't trust her. And you said that may be, and I wrote it down because I wondered what the effect of that was to be on the receiving end of. I'm wondering about whether you believed her or whether you were where you were when you made that remark.
Well, I think at that point I was just mostly concerned with letting her know that I couldn't leave. I had no option but to.
Okay.
And so, I was.
Yeah, it's the words we use. It's interesting. I say, "Oh, I'm in trouble," and you say, "Well, that may be." There's almost a but there coming up. Yeah. So just calling your attention to those words that we often use when we're not quite sure whether we're getting an accurate picture from someone. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I would like to actually introduce our simulation professional who played Anita.
Yes.
The other day. to offer some feedback to our
Yeah.
police learner who's still a police learner at this
Yeah.
point. So
Sharmila, meet
Sharmila?
Wayne. Wayne, meet
Yeah.
Sharmila.
That's right.
Hi there.
Hi.
So yeah, thanks for having that conversation with me.
Thank you.
I feel like for me, it happened in two chunks. If I could just summarize the two chunks for me. In the first pass, before we timed out, I felt cornered. And in the second pass, I felt like I had options. And that it was more of like a collaboration rather than commanding, which it felt like in the beginning. In the first section, you said you were Wayne. I literally thought you had the wrong place because I didn't know a Wayne. And then when I heard you were associated with my roommate, I thought even worse things, that you were maybe in cahoots with my roommate to try and get me out of there. And then when you introduced yourself finally as a police officer, all of this emotion and trauma came back from back home and how the police treated people that I knew. So that is why I was very, very hesitant to even be talking to you at the beginning.
Right.
What I think shifted for me in the second half was when, because I think in the first half, it was a lot of, I need to see you. I need to make sure you're okay. I need this. It was almost like I have to do this and it's my agenda and you don't have a say. I really felt attacked almost. But in the second part, it felt more like you actually had an interest in what was going on with me. And I knew that because you started asking questions about my life. And then you also were repeating back to me things that I had said in the beginning and remarking that those things sound really tough to deal with. When I talked about the police back home, you actually asked me where back home was.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you started becoming curious about my situation and validating how my circumstances seemed like they're really tough, I actually felt more like we were having a conversation rather than you were commanding me to do things. And I was able to sort of reflect more and talk with you more without that panic that happened to be with me at the beginning of our conversation. And then, then it actually really, then you were starting to say things like, it sounds like you're having a bad time and, I'd like to be able to see your face. And then you said, I'd like to talk to you a bit more. And I think it was that statement that encouraged me to open the door, because it wasn't about, I need this from you, I need that from you. It was more, I'd like to talk to you a bit more. And I felt like that was an invitation. And I actually wanted to take you up on that invitation, which is when I decided to open the door, even though it was a crack, but that was huge for me. So yeah, it was a real yin yang. It was a real hot, cold, beginning and end. Like it just transformed for me towards the end. So I really appreciate questions you asked, your genuine sincerity. And it really felt like you were listening to me towards the end. And in the end, I did want to open the door and have a conversation with you. So thank you.
And he asked about killing yourself.
You did. And that was a hard question for me to answer. But in fact, I felt like I had not even asked myself that question. So in that moment, I had to think about it. And then that's when all the stuff that was happening to me came out about being here, losing a job, having no money, my roommate wants me out. So when you asked me that question, I actually had to think about that answer. And a lot came up for me in that moment. It was almost like a relief, to be honest.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you both.
Thanks.
And so this is Wayne Ward, who is a simulation professional, not a police learner of any kind, one of our brilliant simulation professionals who we're going to invite to stay around if you'd like to be part of whatever discussion takes place at this point.
Yeah.
This part is through. And we are getting a few questions in the chat. Now,
John and David, anything you want to say? Or are you seeing any questions coming up that you have?
The only thing that my observation is this, that, the generally empathy, communication, emotional intelligence skills, none of that is really addressed specifically in recruit training. So we take with most recruits, and there are exceptions. Please don't misunderstand me. There are exceptions. There's the odd organization, there maybe a college that has a couple of hours on this or half a day. Yeah. But it is a critical component of what we do. Everything a police officer does is dealing with people, period. Never mind all the cars and the equipment and everything else. Quality policing is going to come from the human exchange that goes between two people, and it can either go good or it can go bad, and that is critical. That's why it's so important that be part of entry-level training. And all I wanted to say is there is a couple of good points in the chat, Nancy, that you want to read. One's from Janice that I think could be rather revealing.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, you've got your hand up. Should we?
Yes, Nancy, a question from Janice Molkansky in the chat. Is anyone aware of training for supervisors on how to debrief with their officers about how they managed mental health calls for service?
So I believe that different police colleges, and I may be corrected on this, the officers that actually do the scenario training, and we've worked with a number of the facilitators, right? That we've actually done workshops around how to facilitate simulation-based learning, scenario-based learning. Part of that is debriefing. Part of that is about how to communicate. Now, you're talking about, yes, you're talking about crisis debriefing. So that's different. So not debriefing simulations, but actual crisis debriefing. That's going to take us to our next webinar. So Les may have an answer for you about that. However, I think that's a great question, Janice. And I don't know of any training programs for supervisors about debriefing officers who have experienced mental health calls and how they've experienced them. It's a good question. I think that's open for the group. We're working in an educational setting in which we do a lot of debriefing around these kinds of learning experiences. We're not doing critical incident debriefing, right? Even those incidents that happen in hospitals, they're different. They're slightly different because of the nature of the impact, the possible impact, right?
What comes up for me is a wellness opportunity here too within this question, both for supervisors and for officers, because it's hard to address and hard to deal with. Yeah.
Well, there you go. LJ Sylvan says, I wonder if you've explored the crisis intervention and de-escalation training that is mandatory for BC police officers. And so, right, Chris is, so it is the training. And I'm not sure if Janice is actually talking about the actual crisis debrief, which is a different animal from, right, Chris, the training interventions for sure. And I think it's a great question.
Nancy?
Yeah.
Nancy, can I comment on this person wonders if we have explored or you have explored the crisis intervention and de-escalation training that's mandatory for all BC police officers. I think that's very good for BC, but the reality is it's not the same in the other provinces, and that's the real issue around the College of Policing for Canada.
Yeah,
there's been an attempt by CACP, the RCMP, and the Human Resources Committee to standardize a crisis intervention and de-escalation training across Canada, and it has failed. Each different college, each organization has a different de-escalation training, and even the de-escalation training that is in place now is not evidence-based. So it just shows how important it is. Yes, BC, for example, might be doing good for their entry-level police officers, crisis intervention and de-escalation training, but the other police services and many small ones or mid-size are not. And even then, de-escalation training is completely inconsistent across Canada. And that's just a comment that I think is important for people to know.
Great. I think that goes right to the point. I think it really does, because, the crisis intervention training we may do may have simulation scenario, and others may be just a PowerPoint, or it may be, an
Yeah.
online kind of module that people are expected to go through, and it's not the same. It's not
Yeah.
standardized.
John has his hand raised, and I
Okay.
see Dr. Harris has got a question in the chat too.
And also
John?
Mike Federico has
Yes,
a question there. So yeah, I want to come back to Mike.
Yes, Deputy Chief Mike Federico's
Yeah.
got a supplementary. For generations, assisted suicide was legally prohibited. Many police officers spent much of their career under that legal scheme. Is it likely that the difficulty that police might have raising the topic is now a police cultural issue to be specifically addressed in training?
Here, here. I think that's a really, really interesting idea, and I agree. I think the topic itself is very uncomfortable, and when we do this work and we do scenarios in which suicide is the main theme, it is so hard
Yeah.
to get asked directly about whether this person is interested in committing suicide or has an intention to commit suicide. And it does seem to be culturally kind of built into the culture that this is not something that it's a bit too personal, as Wayne said, and it feels like it's an invasion. We've also heard people say, if I say it, then they will think that I'll introduce the idea and then they'll want to do it. So I will have pushed them towards suicide rather than kept them away. So it's a really rich topic. And I think with respect to communication skills, there's no such thing as soft. They're not soft skills. If anybody has had a conversation with someone who is suicidal, they are not soft skills. Communication is essential to the outcome of all of that. So I agree. It may be culturally kind of embedded. But I think it's not only in policing. As I said, we've run workshops for mental health nurses, and they don't want to ask about suicide directly. So it may be even broader than the police culture, Mike. I think it may be broader.
Yeah. Yeah, and assisted suicide has different meanings. Like when I think about assisted suicide, I'm thinking about medical assistance in dying, and that there's that whole piece that now is legal and no longer prohibited. So I'm thinking all kinds of things with that question.
Yeah. And then there's Ken, who asked, would you ever ask an agitated patient what would make you feel safer in this encounter? Absolutely. That's a lovely question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Yeah. It provides them with the control to say what it is that would make them feel safer. The other thing that I wanted to point out about the communication and it's kind of a negative, that did not take place and that we often see in training is the kind of ultimatum training or ultimatum communication or make a deal communication, which people really think of as effective, but it's so, if you put down the weapon, I can have a conversation with you, that kind of conversation. Or the ultimatum, like I can't actually have a conversation with you because you're behind the door. So these kinds of communications that get set up as if they are helpful communications are another barrier to creating a relationship. And we see a lot of it, right? It's like, well, that's my, and it is your prerogative because it's your safety that's important. The other person's safety is important. And there are other ways to take care of that safety than to utter an ultimatum of that kind, right? So
a bargain you can't win, right? I'll help you if you put down the knife, or we can talk more if you put down the knife. Well, aren't we talking?
Yeah.
So you put yourself in a bit of a gotcha situation.
Yeah. So the topic of suicide is a hot one. There are many different kinds of situations that we put on their feet for officers who are in training and who are in practice. To the great degree focused on communication. And we do work with use of force officers because in our thinking, there really is an integral connection between communication and safety and use of force options and communication. So it's both and. It's not either or. And so often we'll stop a situation because someone is communicating beautifully, but they're standing within, an arm's length of someone whose hands they can't see. So how do you actually, manage that? How do you manage having a conversation with your fellow officer about something that's going on when the crisis is at a high pitch? So there's lots of different kinds of communication that need to get covered when you are putting these kinds of situations in place.
Mhm.
Sure.
Any
So,
other questions
No.
that people have or you'd like to ask? Just turn your mic on too. This is another conversation possibility we can have.
Yeah.
It's Scott here on the telephone.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning in the discussion about relationship and that, one of the things that occurred to me is that, like, in a police culture, it's important to be an investigator and ask a bunch of questions, but the basis of that is curiosity, and
Yes.
I think if a person is able to be safe as an investigator or police and make sure safety is paramount, but be curious about where these people are coming from, what they're going
Yes.
through, and that is often, I think, like, I was 25 years a police officer and been to several different calls similar to the one that we just went through, and the biggest thing that is and maybe well, not the biggest, but a big thing is the amount of time that it takes to resolve these situations, and
Yeah.
patience, the patience, and it's sad to say,
Patience.
but the capacity of police is, like, they may be knocking on the door of a suicidal person, and then all of a sudden having more calls stacked up to go to a fatal collision or something like that. So there's a lot of factors that play that aren't maybe discussed in a scenario such as this, but I guess my point is really about being genuinely curious and getting
Yes.
to know the person that you're dealing with.
Absolutely. We so agree. That is a great observation.
Yeah.
Because, often, if we try and offer advice or a solution to something too quickly, it's our solution. It's right? It's for us. It's not for the other person. We don't know enough about them. We haven't been curious enough about their experience to be able to provide, the advice. So, the whole beginning with Wayne going, I need to do this and I need to do that and I need to do this is like, well, okay. And, let's flip that around. Who is this person you're talking to? How can we find out more about her? So appreciate that, Scott. Really lovely.
Yeah. And this person will know acutely whether the officer wants to just get it done and get it over with, or whether they are genuinely, as you say, curious. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another cultural issue. If you've got to be rushing off, we increasingly, when we're doing this kind of training specific to mental health training, we hear people say, we're slowing this down. We're not asking you to go to 3 more calls after this one right away. We want you to pay attention to this wandering person and take whatever time is required to take care of this person. So increasingly, we're hearing that from the policing organizations we're working with. So that's positive.
But they care about that.
Yeah, they care about that. That is the culture, which is that you got to get here and here and here and here. So yeah. John, sorry. Yep.
Yes, Nancy, Kerry, I'd just like to invite Deputy Chief Mike Federico if he would like to raise his last point here directly.
Sure.
Or I can read. Oh, great.
Mike, do you want to come on and talk to us? Let's see. One of the most important issues.
Yeah, one of the.
You're unmuted. Can't hear you yet.
It takes a while sometimes.
Mike, you're not on mute by any chance? Okay, John,
well, Mike,
maybe
I'll read the first comment, Dave. Mike says, it has been my experience that police leaders and trainers are looking for evidence-based training. If some of the current training has been shown to be ineffective, I am confident police will discard it. The challenge is informing the police of that fact. Then Mike added a minute later, one of the important issues in police training is the difficulty evaluating the impact or effectiveness of the training. Do we have some suggestions?
Well, he's absolutely right, and it's so inconsistent across the country that it's extremely unfortunate in the interest of public safety. But that's specifically, Mike, why we believe the college is important. The college needs to be created, not bricks and mortar, but an entity of academics, police practitioners, and people that can produce evidence-based curriculum in a variety of subject matter and provide it to existing police services. So you're quite right. There's, I think that probably a high percentage of what we do in police training is very traditional. It is not evidence-based. There's an evidence-based police training organization in existence, but there's no central repository or central college in Canada. Even the existing colleges and police training institutions do not work together. Even the Human Resources and Learning Committee of CACP is not working together with other entities to begin to standardize this. And this is where we believe a college that has that primary legislative function to develop a curriculum that's current and evidence-based is invaluable for our country. And that's why we feel so strongly about what we're doing. We have 3 minutes left. We try and keep our webinars to 90 minutes, but before I say anything and John interjects, I'd like Nancy and Kerry perhaps to summarize.
So to summarize, and also to say something more just about that topic, which is the effectiveness of the training. So there's a very large evidence base about the effectiveness of simulation in healthcare education and in the effectiveness of performance assessments in health professions education, in medicine specifically, many years of evidence, because of course of the cost of these kinds of assessments, it requires an evidence base to justify their existence. I'm not sure about in the police. And I know actually we've had this conversation as we were looking at how can we assess officers in, following their training to see how effective the training has been, which is one way to do it. It's a budget issue, I think, as well as everything else. But I think it's important to be able to see and assess possibly what you've been training your officers to do so that you can make an objective decision about their performance and their skills and knowledge. So that's where we sit when we think about simulation-based assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other challenge is, we're asking officers, we're asking people to bring themselves to each encounter. And, the encounter that we've seen could happen many, many different ways, depending on who's engaging, how they're thinking about the issue at hand, and what their training is, and how comfortable they are being direct about, killing yourself, or using some of these very effective communication skills. So it's hard to get a hold of, and yet when you're in the presence of someone who is able to navigate through really difficult waters, and we spend all our time communicating. This is all we have, is how we engage with each other, whether it's at a systems level or whether we're in an encounter with someone behind a door. So it is it's a provocative problem, a challenge for us to get a hold of and think about.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
thank you. Sorry, Nancy, please go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Wayne and Sharmila for coming and doing this with us, and how much we appreciate their work as simulation professionals. We work with them often, and they are phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you so much for your great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just before we go, and before I thank everyone, I wanted to see, I see Les Titleman is still with us, and I don't want to,
Yes.
I don't want to catch him off guard here. Les is helping us coordinate our next webinar in November, which is really directly related to post-traumatic stress disorder and what police officers put up with, what they learn. Les, I don't know if you can just jump on here and give us a quick overview of who we might expect at our next webinar, which is the 23rd of November. Les, would you happen to be there? And if not, I understand.
I am here. Thanks, everybody. That was a wonderful job. On the 24th of November, we're going to be hosting a webinar for PTSD with officers. We have a guest speaker, Dr. Nick Carlton from out West, who will be giving us some information on some work he's doing with the RCMP and some research. We have a clinician from York Regional Police who deals directly with wellness and some of the topics that were touched on today, having to do with after action debriefings and things like that, and some of the newer, more progressive programs that more police services are start to institute. And we're hoping to have a couple of police officers that have been through PTSD and come back to work, and they'd like to tell their stories. So I hope to see a lot of people show up for that.
Thank you. Les will
Thank
moderate
you.
that session, and we're really looking forward to it. The academic or the professor from the University of Regina will talk about the RCMP longitudinal study on PTSD. So they're going to begin to track recruits right from the very beginning and through some of their service to see if the training that they've had around PTSD and other issues, how it's affected them, and it's going to be a fascinating study, a national study. Okay.
Thank you.
Les, thank you. John, you have one comment before I conclude?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Just quickly, thank you everyone for coming today. And I just ask you to watch out on your social media or your inbox from the CCPR for our Giving Tuesday campaign. As you know, that's becoming pretty common. It's American Thanksgiving's followed by Cyber Monday, then Giving Tuesday, and Canadians are adopting that. So please watch for information and think about us. CCPR is worthwhile. We're a charity and we have lots to get accomplished. So we need your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
John,
much.
thank
Thank you for
you.
the invitation.
John, thank you. Let me just conclude by saying that I truly appreciate everyone's attendance today, but particularly Nancy McNaughton, Kerry Knickle, for coordinating this. They put a lot of thought and effort into it. I know it's very to their heart. They're very supportive of what we're doing as a coalition. So I want to extend my personal, sincere appreciation to both of you for being here. And of course to Sharmella and Wayne for doing a very, very good job. As odd as it might sound, and I see one comment in the chat that really says the same thing, or heard one comment that says the same thing, is what you went through is actually a very real scenario. It's hard for people, new police officers, or don't have a range of experience to deal with these things without the proper training, knowledge, and this the experience that Nancy and Kerry are trying to get across to us. And you both played a very good role today, and I appreciate the time that you spent with us. And I know it's volunteer time, so again, to all of you, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, John. Could you stay on?